And Mr. Chairman, we're live streaming.
He's not speaking anymore. They send him online and we're not like, so it's okay with you.
Place so we can get started. I know we still have some council members on the way, but we're going to get started and they can catch up wherever we are on this agenda. And the agenda going to proceed as outlined. And we're going to try to keep it moving as speedily as we possibly can. And first thing on the agenda, we'd like to start. First, I'd like to welcome everyone here. And this is this purpose for this particular session is only for the housing part of the State Port Authority. Only the housing part. It's not infrastructure and those things. It's only for the housing. So we will make that specifically clear. So when you have questions later on, that it's only dealing with the affordable housing piece. So we can keep everything moving smoothly. And I'm asking everyone just to be, kind to one another, and let's have a good meeting and go forward with that. Now we are bow our head for a moment of silence, please. Amen.
Amen.
I'd like to have approval for the minutes of the last city meeting.
So moved. Second.
It was moving second. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposes, ayes have it. And now I would like to ask all the CD committee members to stand and to give their name and the district that they represent. And then also from that, then we'll ask the commission to do the same.
Councilman Gregory, District 6.
Mayor John Tecklenburg.
Ross Appel, District 11.
McKenna Joyce, Planning Commission.
Harry Lassane, Planning Commission.
Charlie Karras, Planning Commission.
Donna Jacobs, Planning Commission.
That one is. Sunday Lemphasis, Planning Commission.
And I'm Robert Mitchell. I'm the chairman. I'm also a council member for District 4 for the city of Charleston. Now we're going to move right along. I'm going to ask Ms. Gianna Johnson to come up first before we get started in the presentation to come up and say whatever she would like to say. She's the director of the of community development for the city of Charleston.
There's a scripture from the Bible that says, be ready in season and out. So this is one of those seasons when I'm ready. Thank you, Councilmember Mitchell. Thank you all for your service to the community. Thank you, Planning Commission members, for being here as well. Certainly, we recognize that affordable housing is a key issue for our community. What I would admonish us with is that we cannot continue to do business the same way. Affordable housing costs an amazing amount of funding. When we think about what we've been able to accomplish over the last few years, and if you ride through, for example, the East Side community of the city of Charleston, where Tracy Doran, who heads up Humanities Foundation, is building 88 units of senior housing for that community. $42 million to build 88 units of affordable rental housing. If you drive a little bit around the corner there, the city of Charleston has helped to facilitate with a partnership with Fitch Irick, which is a private sector developer, 64 units of family housing, and we're paying close to $30 million for that development. And why am I sharing this with you? I want you to recognize how important it is, first of all, and I think we all know that, and that is why we're here. But I also want you to recognize that it comes with cost. And I have challenged my team. I have challenged our planning team as we think through the rewrite of the zoning code, that we look at how we can do this better and make it a little bit easier for those of us who've been doing this for some time. Over the last several weeks, we have been meeting with Barbara Melvin and her team, who are very interested in getting this right. And so I'm going to defer to them and let them have their time to share with you what we've been discussing. But I would not only challenge them to look at this differently, but the entire community, including our business community, as well as our other governmental entities. In my opinion, I might be slightly biased, but the city of Charleston has literally led this effort for the Tri-County area. We have implemented strategies that our team members in other counties have not yet done. And that doesn't mean they're not interested, it just hasn't been done. So we're challenging them as well. But as we think about this issue, I also want our business community to realize that they have a play in this. You cannot depend solely on local government to do this for the entire community. Now, that doesn't mean you come to me and say, Gianna, I need $1 million to get this done. That means you bring to me a strategy by which you are going to help us house your employees, because housing is an economic development issue. So as I sit down, I challenge us today to think differently about housing and think how important your growing up, what you lived in, what your parents provided, and how essential that living was to your growing up, to who you are today. And as we talk, hopefully we will come to a great consensus on bringing more housing to the city of Charleston. Thank you.
Very much, John. Before I move forward, I have one more council member that came in. I would ask her to stand and give her her name and the district she represents.
Thank you, and my apologies for being late, y'all. Councilwoman Caroline Parker, James Island, District 12.
And also in the planning commission, we have one more came in.
Erica Harrison.
And Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Saccharin is also joining virtually.
Councilman Saccharin, you would do the same?
Thank you, Chair. Councilman Saccharin, District 3.
Thank you very much. And we're gonna move right along. We have the presentation from the representative of the South Carolina State Port Authority. And we can get started. Whoever's going to take that role.
I'll kick it off. And if we could just have our presentation up, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, I'm going to be very, very brief in my comments. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, members of the committee, as well as Planning Commission members and city staff. As we're bringing up these slides, I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to dig deep into the issue of affordability at Union Pier. We really appreciate your time this afternoon. I'm Jacob Lindsay with Lowe. We're assisting the port in this process, and I'm going to be very short, just covering one slide. First of all, as we talk about the issue of affordability and PUDs, the proposal for Union Pier, the master plan, will come before all of you as a PUD, a planned unit development. And contained within that will be terms of affordability, which we're here to discuss this evening. The city of Charleston also has affordability requirements in two other zoning categories. One zoning category is the MU2, mixed use workforce housing category, MU2. The city also has affordability requirements in its accommodations zone for hotels. Those are the two base zoning districts that have affordability requirements in the city. Now, that's not a PUD. Those are base requirements. And to go through what those are in MU2, you probably all know it off the back of your hand. The requirements today are 20% of the housing in MU2 must be affordable for a period of 25 years. Those are the terms that we've set. And those have increased over time. It used to be 15% for 10 years. And before that, it was nothing. So over time, we've recognized that we need to increase our affordability requirements. Now, in the case of Union Pier, this isn't what we're doing, but it's just to establish an apples to apples comparison. If Union Pier were to be zoned MU2, what would be the affordability requirements? That's the standard that the city has set. Where would we be? We propose 1,600 dwelling units at Union Pier maximum. And what that would translate to, if we estimated the fee in lieu, because MU2 allows construction of units or the payment of a fee. Either can be done or some mix thereof. At Union Pier, if it were hypothetically to be zoned MU2 and the developer opted to pay the fee, that amount would be $27 million. That would be the fee in lieu for Union Pier. And in addition, our proposal asks for 600 hotel rooms. What would be the fee on those hotel rooms? That estimated fee would be around $1,530,000. So in an equivalent scenario of MU2 and accommodations, Union Pier in its current plan would pay a total of $28,530,000 estimated number. So I just want to establish that as a baseline comparison. To talk just for briefly, now let's shift over to PUDs. As you all know, there is no requirement in state statute or local statute for PUDs to do anything for affordability, but there's an expectation on the part of the city. And the expectation today is that PUDs should have 20% of their housing as affordable. And that's what you all have asked for, and that's what you all have gotten from recent PUDs. And that makes it equivalent to MU. And if you go back further in history, some of the PUDs only got 15% affordable. And if you go back further in history, they had none. So those things have changed over time. And I know you all know that, but I just simply wanted to start this discussion by setting some baseline expectations for what you all have done in the past and how much Union Pier would be obligated to pay if it were built under the MU zoning district today. So with that said, I'm going to end my remarks there, unless there's anything else that you all would like me to add, if I've missed anything. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Barbara Melvin, CEO of the South Carolina Ports Authority.
So finally, once the microphone was set for somebody my height. Good afternoon, members of City Council and the Planning Commission. My name is Barbara Melvin. I'm the president and CEO of the South Carolina Ports Authority, and we are actually delighted to be with you today to talk about a subject that admittedly I knew absolutely nothing about when I started this process. Then I moved into a category of knowing just enough to be dangerous. And now I am invested because this is an extremely serious issue. And I will tell you, I had no idea what we were up against. I had no idea the talent level that we have within the city of Charleston to address this issue. And I think you're going to see from our commitment that you now have somebody who would be a proud advocate to stand on the battlefield with about 3 or 4 warriors who have been doing this for decades alone. That includes you, Councilmember Gregory, Mayor Tecklenburg, others have made this a priority. Gianna, I mean, I can't even say enough about your patience in educating me, by the way, on what the requirements are. But we're really proud as a port to be putting forward what I consider to be a very bold plan, an innovative plan, a creative plan. But if you have other ideas for us, please share it, because this has been evolving for us, but we think we're in a really interesting place right now. So let me tell you a little bit about the considerations for our proposal. We wanted to partner not only with the city of Charleston, but we wanted to partner with the Charleston Housing Authority, given their role within the city. We wanted to be creative. We wanted immediate impact, because we think sometimes when you're talking about these projects, it can be 10, 12 years before people realize anything. And we thought, okay, how can we do something immediately? Because I got relatively passionate about this, so that became a goal. Then we had an idea about some intermediate ideas. And then how could we continue to help and challenge others to get on this battlefield with us? So what could we do to provide a long-term revenue stream to help address affordable housing needs within the city? So we'll talk progressively about kind of the immediate, the intermediate, and the long-term. Hugie Street site, this is a site that is under the control of the Charleston Housing Authority. They are in need of $16 million to construct 77 units And we have put in our PUD the offer of that money, $8 million from the port and $8 million from the buyer of the property, to be paid on the time of closing. And that would be for permanent affordability. It's less than 1.5 miles from the Union Pier site, and the units would be delivered very quickly. And you can see the breakdown of these units. 1 bedrooms at 33% of the project, the planned project, 2 bedrooms at 45%, 35 units, 9 units at 3 bedrooms, and then there are even some 4-bedroom units in there. So if you don't mind, I'd like to call up Art Milligan, the president and CEO of the Charleston Housing Authority, just to give you a little bit more information about this project. Art?
Good afternoon to the chair, to the committee, and to the council members. My name is Art Milligan. I'm the CEO of the Charleston Housing Authority. Quick background, I was born and raised in Columbia, South Carolina. But I came to Charleston in 1976 as a cadet at the Citadel. And I left in 79 and have not been back until 2021 when I came back as the CEO of the Housing Authority. I followed Don Cameron in his big shoes, try to fill the void that was here. The project that we're talking about and the program is going to help us greatly. At this time, the Housing Authority is in the midst of redeveloping all the properties we have. We currently have 1,407 units in the city of Charleston that we're revising. Those units, we got a bad start off because of tax credit problems. And so we kind of got stuck and have not been able to move forward. The money that we're talking about will allow us to take on debt and use the money as gap funding to get started, which will kickstart our whole program. With that, we'll be able to move through most of the units in the next couple of years to get things going. Again, this is an amazing program to be able to use the funds that are here to kick off our RAD program. And the RAD program allows us to turn most of the units into Section 8 project vouchers and then build units so they can move in. And we hope to be able to increase our occupancy by at least 40, 50% in the process. So again, this is one of those things that we've been hoping for and praying for a while, for money to come in, and now it's here. We continue to push as hard as we can. So I just have to say thank you to the Port Authority and just giving consideration, because otherwise we would still be here with properties that need to be dealt with. In 1979, when I left the Citadel, the average income for an adult was about average income, the population here in Charleston was about 70,000. So now it's over 400,000. So things are majorly different. However, the number of public housing units at that time were about 1,200. So we've increased 200 more units. We're 1,400. Now, 79 is over 40 years ago, which I hate to admit that, but it is. And as you can see, we've not made a lot of progress. This is an opportunity for us to step out and be able to do something amazing in the city of Charleston. And I hadn't been back here, came back here in 2021. And it's a very different place than it used to be. But the changes are good indeed now, as we need to have housing for everybody here. So all the different workforce people have a place to stay in Charleston. When I left here, Somerville was a very small place. And North Charleston was a suburb of Charleston. But they're now filled with people who had to move out because they can't live in Charleston. So I would just say to this board that what we're doing here will move forward us for years. They'll kick off our program, which will go not only add the 72 units that we have here, but we hope to be able to move another 150 units immediately after that. And over the next few years, we will get all of our inventory taken care of, either new, built, or rehab. So again, this is working with the city of Charleston, and the city's been very, very friendly and contributed a lot to what we're doing. So is the county. So again, this is one of the things where all the players are working together. And I would just say to you, anything that we can do to make this go forward will only help the city of Charleston. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Art. It's kind of hard not to feel Gianna and Art's passion about this issue. So moving into kind of the intermediate phase of what we would do. So on-site units, which is kind of what everybody grabbed onto, given how different this proposal is. We have proposed 50 units on-site, the actual Union Pier site. So we are combining that with the units that we're creating with the Housing Authority. And inside of this, the City of Charleston with Gianna's department, as well as the Planning Department, spoke to us about accomplishing 3 additional things as we consider these 50 units. That would be the area median income between 60 to 120%, a mix of bedroom units, and 30 years for the affordability period. And we are agreeing to all of that. So that is for these 50 units. Moving into also what would be intermediate, we are offering to donate land that we own at East Bay and Chapel, and you can see it right there. That's our Columbus Street terminal in the background, kind of the rows of BMWs there. So that site is quite proximate to the Union Pier site, less than half a mile. That property is also slated for traffic improvements as part of the PUD. But regardless of how that ends up, we have modeled 85 units on that site. Given how the rest of that area may redevelop in the future, if there is consideration or matching areas that might be taller, this is on a 5-story building. But if that matches later in the future, for additional units that can be created there, we're willing to do that as well. And then the South Carolina port, we don't want to just hand this land over and say good luck. We want to stay involved and coordinate with the city and the other entities to bring this to life. Moving into what we consider the in perpetuity offer as part of this PUD. We have included a permanent revenue stream for the city upon transaction of the property. And this transfer fee would be able to be utilized anywhere within the city for affordable housing. And those rules should be established by our commission and council. That is, certainly within your purview. But the transfer fee will apply to all future property sales and ownership changes on Union Pier. So 1% transfer fee for transactions up to $250 million. And then incrementally over that $250 million, it would be an additional 0.5%. And the transfer fee will also have an initial payment upon sale at $1 million, so that there's something immediately in the trust fund to get that started. And then in actual dollars, over a 99-year period, we estimate, in looking at absorption rates for other things within the city, that this fee should create about $1.5 billion. Just thought it might be important to show a map about the locations of these proposed sites in the immediate, intermediate, and intermittent sites, just so that you had an idea of how close that they all are. And then if you'll indulge me, I thought it might be good to walk through this information. So the whole plan, you look at the location side, the left-hand side of the slide, the Hugh Street site, on site at Union Pier, the East Bay and Chapel site, and then the transfer fee, of course, Charleston Housing, and then the city being the recipient of the last 3. And then we valued this based on price per unit to build at Hugh The estimated price, and I believe, Gianna, this is a 2019 estimate of about $325,000 per unit for the city of Charleston. So that's just the number of units that values. We have a letter in hand to purchase that site at Chapel for $8 million, but we are going to donate this land as part of this PUD. And then in the transfer fee, we valued this at the first transfer only, because we think that in fairness, as we're asking for credit in the plan, it should only go with the first sale, because that's something you can feel and realize within a 10, 12-year time frame. So that total value is about $72.25 million. And if you want to equate that using the cost of a unit for the Charleston Housing Authority and the cost of the unit for the city that's been estimated, that comes to about 310 units. Additional value that the plan creates, as you heard from Art, are some immediate also properties within the housing authority. And if you just look at the first one at the Meeting Street Manor, which is where they would move to right after Hugie, that's an additional 91 units that we are not seeking credit for, but we just wanted to show a downstream immediate impact of this investment at about $19 million and 91 units. And then if you look at the value of the transfer fee using the $325,000 over the life of the fee, so 99 years, that's greater than 4,000 units. So that's an impact. And that's something that we wanted to do. So if you look back at the fee and lieu structure that Jacob started with, in comparison to just looking at the first transfer, the value we're creating is again more than $72 million versus what we could do at $28.5 million. Why we became passionate is because we found a way to make an immediate impact. We found a revenue stream in perpetuity. We feel like accepting Gianna's challenge. This is innovative, it's flexible, it's collaborative. Let's hope it's trend setting, because I'd like to challenge everyone, as Gianna did in the business community, to pick this up and run with it. Let's do this in more places. Let's have a transfer fee that makes an impact and starts to dent this 16,000 unit need. And we're very proud to exceed the expectations that we were given on the number of units. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I think next. I think we have a presentation by Mr. Lowell. Lowell, you doing a presentation? No, that's about it. I think we have another council member that came in, and I would like him to give his name and the district he represents.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Keith Waring. Proud to represent District 7, which is West Ashley.
Thank you. This meeting is called really for the city committee to hear the information so they can make a judge decision and when they are voting on this project. And this is why this meeting is called, so they can have all the information they need to make a fair and just decision. And that's what we have to do with the city committee. And now, right now, we're going to turn it over to the city committee to see if they have any questions they want to ask. And from that, then we'll turn it over to the planning commissioners members to see if they have any questions. Any members of the city committee have any questions?
I've got one, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So, very flexible, creative plan, covering a lot of bases. I did want to ask about the transfer fee because, you know, depending on how the property gets developed, you may or may not have that expectation that you have, that y'all have projected at least for the transfer fee. It's a wonderful thing to have, y'all, by the way. There's no good repeating revenue source other than our fee in lieu and a couple other things that we've devised at the city to provide funding for future affordable housing. So I commend you for that. But, has the issue come up, about the amount of home ownership within the development as compared to rental units? For example, a developer might build apartments, and then if it's his liking, he might just hold on to those apartments for a long, long time and not sell them. He might be an apartment developer that likes to, hold their product, so to speak. So then a sale wouldn't occur for a long, long time, and we'd never collect a transfer fee. And are we dedicating ourselves to home ownership, even though they might be multifamily units, condos, a certain amount of them to be home ownership, so that we almost ensure that some transfer fees will be generated in the future?
So, Mayor, what we did when we did this modeling, and we listened to a couple of things. First of all, that concern. So in our above the line numbers of comparison of the 72.25, we only took into account that first sale. And it is a mixture of how we were modeling the property as it's being planned. So it is reflective of the mix of rental versus owned units, and then other office, et cetera, as it's planned today. And then as we looked out at the 1.5 billion, that's a sale every 10 years. I think it is modeling when you're looking at 99 years. But even if we miss it by half, we're pretty impactful. So we feel quite confident about the property sales.
Councilman Appel? Yeah. I know you always have it.
I mean, y'all are egging me on here. Feel like I gotta come up with something. So is it correct to assume that this transfer fee is going to be something that's built into the covenants for the property, and the architecture is going to be set up that way so future purchasers know where to send the check, and that's where all of this is going to be outlined?
Yes, it is absolutely going to be established. And as I said, I think that the expectation of the use of the fee should be set between the Planning Commission and Council. That's a governance issue. Will go to the city of Charleston. I wish I could say I created this idea. I didn't. Exist in other places. Daniel Allen has a transfer fee. We just think the application of this to help the affordable housing issue is the most impactful way to utilize that. And I think even within the city of Charleston, I learned the other day, there is a transfer fee that has been applied proximate to the site for maintenance of the facility. So it's not a new idea. It's just probably one of the largest ones that we could implement.
Councilmember?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you go back to the slide showing the number of units and the cost?
Sure.
I just had a question about East Bay and Chapel. So East Bay and Chapel, 8 million, we're talking just land cost. We're still going to have to build those units. So we're taking into consideration 85 units there, but we are going to have to build those units. So can I ask Mr. Mayor or Ms. Johnson, what do you think the cost to build those 85 units on that land would be? And do we have it, or where are we getting it from?
So, Councilwoman, we, and Ms. Melvin mentioned, we've been using a figure of $325,000 per unit to build. And it's higher than that now. It's just slightly over 400,000 to build a unit now, and that's under the affordable threshold. And no, we do not currently have that in our coffers to build. And I might just add, since I'm standing, one of the things that we looked at as we've talked about this is making sure that we have a higher number of units on site at the Union Pier. And with that higher number, certainly we understand that the PUD recommends 20% within a PUD of the units on site. The thought was we could at least achieve 15 and then consider all of the other options that are available with council later on as these things come to fruition. maybe looking at a reduction in the number of units that are necessary on site. But we had a slightly higher number than 50 that should go on site at Union Pier. So I wanted to mention that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Melvin, I appreciate you and your team bringing forward for affordable housing, the deed transfer fee. Mr. Chairman, you may remember about 4 years ago, we had a National League of Cities convention that was held in Charlotte, and they had a workshop, and the title of the workshop was Creating Affordable Housing in a Rising Real Estate Market. So we thought, wow, that sounds like Charleston. The panel that was presenting was led by the mayor at the time of Boulder, Colorado. And had you closed your eyes and just listened to the strategies that they had applied to create affordable housing in Boulder, Colorado, I closed my eyes and you would have swore he was talking about Charleston. Tax credit housing, fee in lieu. They tried all of those. But until you create a dedicated stream of income that repeats itself year after year, it's going to be very difficult to catch up with the 16,000 plus units that we need for affordable housing that's been projected by a lot of credible sources. So when you made mention of that, that certainly is a strategy that makes sense. But in a casual way, we kind of made mention of Daniel Island having it. I don't know that a lot of people even realize that Daniel Island had that. Can you tell me where that fee goes towards on Daniel Island? I mean, it doesn't come to the city.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to phone a friend.
Okay. I know.
I'll just briefly speak to that. So that's held by the developer and the Daniel Island Company, and they use it for maintenance only.
And the difference in what you all are proposing and that is what?
Solely dedicated to affordable housing in the city of Charleston.
Okay. Certainly a difference. The tax exempt portion, if you go to create affordable housing, one of the ways to do that is you have to mitigate the land costs. So free land, okay? In a rising real estate market, land is at a premium. Is land a premium at on the peninsula of Charleston, really the Charleston region, but certainly the peninsula of Charleston, it is. So if free land is part of the equation, then the land cost can be passed through to the end user. If it's tax exempt, Mr. Milligan, the Housing Authority is tax exempt, isn't that accurate? So if you have a tax exempt entity that owns those affordable housing, whether it's the state, federal, county, housing authority, then there's no property taxes. And if government owns it, now they say, what do you mean government? We pass by some of that all the time on Society and Meeting Street. It used to be the old Salvation Army building. There's affordable senior units there that's owned by the county of Charleston, believe it. A few years ago, I had the pleasure of doing the ribbon cutting at the Grand Bohemian Hotel. There was finally appointed younger ladies from that senior citizen center that came to the ribbon cutting that was held right around 12 o'clock. They were so excited about the Grand Bohemian Hotel. Well, they wanted the ribbon cutting to get over so they can get the happy hour, which was going to start sooner. Okay. But the part that was so good for me that I felt they literally walked a matter of feet to be able to enjoy some of the finest atmosphere that our country has to offer. And that's because somebody thought, with the county or otherwise, not to sell what was there in the old Salvation Army building. That could have been $1 million condos right there, Mr. Mayor, you know. And then I think about the Canterbury House. Canterbury House on Bufane Street, which is held by, I think, the Episcopal Association. Certainly those could be $1 million condos, but it is affordable housing in perpetuity, not housing that expires at the end of 15 years, Ms. Shaw Johnson, or 20 years in the sense of tax credit housing To attack the problem, it takes free land, no property taxes, and nonprofits like Mr. Milligan's removes the profit motive. They cover costs and expenses, but you don't have the profit. So leadership on that has to come from somewhere. So I thank you for even proposing that, Ms. Melvin. Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Thank you, Councilman.
That's
Almost
okay.
forgot your name.
When you get our age, I understand. I really want to applaud what you're doing. I think it will, in fact, revolutionize things. But I'd like to go back to something that Ms. Shaw Johnson talked about, and that is it's going to take everyone, including the business community, to meet this challenge. But it's also going to have to include other governmental entities that also own land. We know that 50% in many cases of the cost of construction on the peninsula is the land cost. So we can get the land free, it helps with the subsidy. And where I'm going with this is we have the Charleston School Board that owns a lot of land on the peninsula and throughout the city. And if somehow we can partner with them, and of course, Keith and I have had this discussion already, by the way, if we can partner with them, especially schools on the peninsula, like Rivers, Math and Science, where there's lots of land behind that school. So I think that it's also time for us to have a dialogue with the county and the school board to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do to increase affordability, particularly for their employees, faculty members, teachers. So at some point, I'd like for that to get into this discussion and for them to be pulled to the table, if they haven't already, to see what they can contribute in terms of the land that they own on the peninsula and throughout the city that they can dedicate for affordable units for their faculty members, their teachers, or whoever is working at that school.
I couldn't agree with you more. From a lot of the research that I've been doing, if we can be beneficial in a seat at that table, I commit to you we are there, and let our transfer fee help fund those efforts.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone from the Planning Commission?
Well, a quick comment and then a question. First of all, the fee in lieu, I don't think, speaking for some of the members of the Planning Commission, are big fans of the fee in lieu because we don't think we'll ever solve the problem that way, as Giannis told us many times. And you said it, the private developers need to step in, and the fee in lieu gives them a monetary way out, which we'll never solve the problem that way. And I think eventually we're gonna have to require these units have to be built. And I think we've been proponents of that, but that's my comment. In terms of question, y'all, when I say y'all, is the Ports Authority going to be the developers of this affordable housing, or is the buyer, Lowe's or whoever the buyer is going to be?
So the on-site units would be whoever buys the Union Pier site. The port is committed to help bring a developer to the table for the site at the corner of Chapel and East Bay or Washington, whichever corner you want to put that on. We've had a lot of people contact us about being that partner. We have even shared the 30-year commitment, and that has not scared anybody away. So I agree with the assertion that truly taking the land cost out of the equation makes this very attractive.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, I'll jump in. So I appreciate the presentation and Ms. Melvin, I wrote down bold, innovative, and creative. And I think that's what you've come up with. And I think in fairness, that's what this requires. I mean, I think that's the minimum that the public should expect of all of us and of you to
Agreed.
produce a plan like that. My colleague, Mr. Karras, just kind of alluded to something that we've discussed a lot at the Planning Commission, and that is, the fee in lieu essentially transfers the responsibility for building housing, affordable housing, from the private sector to the public sector. It shifts that responsibility from the development community to the city government. And I had a boss that I worked for a while who used to say, city governments don't build cities, developers build cities. And I think the concern we have is that a commitment of 3.1% of the units being built on site by the private sector, not asking the city, not giving the city land or giving the city money and having Ms. Johnson and her colleagues have to spend time and money building the units. We'd like to see the private sector build more of the units so that they're integrated into the development, this beautiful thing that's going to be built there that we would all like to see. We want to see the affordable housing built right there on site. And I think that's the challenge that we feel on the commission. I guess I'm speaking for myself in this case, but I just simply feel like we need more on site. That's my comment.
Thank you.
I have some questions also about the affordability piece. So understanding what the numbers are in with the number for what you have to earn between 60 and 120% AMI. I think 120% places you at 46,000 if you're a single household, right, Gianna? Close to that. So with someone who's making that and is able to use one of these units, there becomes this moment of instability in their life because of the fact that they may be making just shy over that. And so in your development, how are you going to address that moment that you have that middle tier, that person that needs to be able to transition from affordable unit to a middle tier unit? Is that something that y'all considered of making sure that people can actually stay in your development without having to feel like that is they've expensed themselves out?
That would be kind of beyond what we have put forward. I don't know. That's expertise that I just don't have with regards to how people are placed in the units and what that transition looks like if, say, they need to go from a studio to a one to a two. I'm not sure how that process works. There are a lot of experts who do know how that works. But all I can say as an observer of this is we've got to create more units to allow for that mobility. So that's really what our goal was.
Any other more questions from the Planning Commission? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Could you go back to the slide that had the details, kind of summary numbers, and included a line item there, I think, for the Meeting Street Manor extension. No, you were on the right side, just right in the middle, Meeting Street Manor extension with the Charleston Housing Authority, 18,900,091 units. What was that coming from the fee also, that 18 million?
That is the ability for them to move to the second project once they got the swing space built from the 16 million, and then the rededication of the full equity of that back to the Charleston Housing Authority. And I can let Art speak more to that if that doesn't satisfy the answer.
I think that answers the question. And let me commend you, by the way, also on the front of having Art here and proposing this partnership with the Charleston Housing Authority. Most folks don't know this, but the Charleston Housing Authority is one of the largest landowners on the peninsula of Charleston and then in the city of Charleston. And yes, Art, we'd like to see more units, but the fact is that many of their units are more than worn out. They're tired and they need to be rebuilt and rehabbed. And to help him and the housing authority get on their way to the business of doing that, I think is a big plus for our city. You know, once they get through their whole inventory of properties, it could substantially increase some affordable housing in our city. So we really appreciate that. But it sounds like the initial 16 million is what's going to them. And then it's up to the housing authority to roll it, to reinvest it as they move forward.
That's right. That's why we kept those 91 units below the line.
So
We weren't asking for credit for that. And Mayor, credit where credit is due. You planted the seed with us to go speak with them. So thank you.
I've been a successful matchmaker one time in my life. Maybe this will be my second time. So not to be picky, but on the topic of the property at East Bay and Chapel Street, and you acknowledge that we're on the traffic side, we're looking to possibly realign Washington Street there. And I do want to, I mean, we're going to get picky and count numbers, and we're putting 85 units there. I do want to make sure that when that roadway gets realigned, that we're really able to accomplish 85 units there. If not, we would respectfully look for some other properties as well. And then lastly, I just want to accentuate, and a few people have already said this, but starting with Gianna, that we do want more units on site. And I personally believe that can be put to the responsibility of whoever the future developer is, and that some kind of formula could be worked out that where this income stream gets utilized, you know, for the creation of these units, but to have more of them mixed in on the site. I'm hearing from the Planning Commission and our own staff that that's a direction that we would like to see. Not that it couldn't be worked out using some of the funds from the income stream, but that we do get those units on site, a bigger percentage there.
Thank you. As we said at the beginning of this plan continues to evolve, and I'm here to listen.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that's why we are here, to make sure we get all the understanding of what we are about to do and what their plans are. So like we could make a good decision on what we need. I mean, housing is a great need here in the city of Charleston. So many people are working here and cannot even afford to stay in the city of Charleston. And this is something that the city, we always planned, and we always fight to create more affordable housing so people can stay here in this peninsula where they live or where they grew up in the city of Charleston. And that's not happening right now. And like I always mention, that even my kids don't stay in the city of Charleston. They can't afford to stay in the city of Charleston. They have to move out there in Latson and Somerville and other places. And, you know, it's a shame, but they're working, a lot of them, they're working in the city of Charleston, but cannot stay here. So we're talking about traffic and things like that. They have to come in here somewhere, so they're going to bring the traffic in the peninsula. So if we find places, or they have places that they can afford to stay here, then they don't have to do that. So these are things it's a very serious matter when it comes to housing and affordability. And that's one thing we have to look at very seriously when it comes to housing, and create housing that's fit for everyone. School teachers, firemen, policemen, and people who are working in these hospitality fields, and because they have all these places here and they need them to work here. So all these things is a factor. So we have to look at housing very seriously. And I think I have spoken to a couple of the state board members, and they know exactly how I feel when it comes to housing, because that's all I did for my past 33 years working in housing. And I'm very passionate about that, and seeing that we have housing for everyone. Full reference. I mean, look at a big vision. And this is what we have to do. I think someone else have a question on the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't really have too much of a question, but I do really want to echo, because I think that everybody needs to hear from all of us that we put a lot of effort in our comp plan and to understand housing. And I personally am very excited that Gianna has challenged everybody so strongly and that the Ports Authority has come forward with an innovative plan. But I would like to echo what has been said. More units on site might be something we really need to look at, because what I've heard in my few years here is that when money comes into the city, it's a little bit harder for us to leverage it, because that's not what we do. We govern, we don't build houses. The private sector builds the houses. So I just want to, that's been said, but I don't think we could say it enough for everybody to hear that. I'm curious as to who actually this checked transfer fee is going to go to. I don't think we answer that today, but these details, when we as the Planning Commission see this PUD, I think we will really be into T's crossed, I's dotted, and pencils sharpened. And I just hope that all of those details will be laid out. I heard from Councilman Appel about some details about real estate transfer. I think we're going to need to see those kinds of details. We don't need to hash them all out today because we're up at the 30,000 level. But in order for us to feel comfortable about how this will all move forward as housing, we will need to see those details ultimately. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And absolutely, we're happy to share the pro forma that allowed us to share these, this data today. And again, I appreciate your comment, and we are still listening to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If there are any other questions from the commission or the planning commission or the CD committee? If not, now we go into the public participation. Now, let me check with the clerk first.
Mr. Chairman, we have 32 people who have signed up to speak.
Okay, we have 32 people who want to speak or ask questions, and I'm gonna give everyone 1 minute. 1 minute. I please adhere to the 1 minute, please. And so we can get through this, get through it properly. So the clerk will call your name and you can come up to the mic here and we give you 1 minute. If you go over 1 minute, she will tell you time. And the mic will be cut off on you. So let's kind of adhere to this and let's go forward. Thank you.
Anthony Bryant.
One minute. This whole, the planning commission in 1920 something, you guys, that started in 1960 something with a community development committee, straight up class, racist land use politics, period. We're here because of race and class. And we're suffering because of racist land use policies. People are now in our community at-risk homeless, critically, chronically unhoused because of this process. This process alone has put people on the street. So therefore, Ms. Melvin and the Chamber of Commerce have a fiduciary responsibility to their conscience to ensure that this project works. Have a good evening.
Bob Hutchinson. And if anyone is online, they can press *6 to unmute themselves.
We're actually arts partner in Meeting Street in Hugie.
Excuse me, could you, when you come to the mic, could you tell us your name and your address, please?
Bob Hutchinson in Columbia. We're actually arts partner with Meeting Street and Hugie Street. We want to say thank you. It's a great opportunity. It's a great thing. The only thing I would urge as co-developer, as you look at future developments, streamlining the process, because Gianna is absolutely right. We need to drive down the cost so that these can be, 400,000 it boggles the mind that that's an affordable unit. So we need to be thinking about that, because what we're doing today isn't working. But again, Art, thanks.
Richard Gow.
I'm Richard Gow. I live at 150 Brady Street. I'm an architect. I do work for transitional, homeless, market rate, all sorts of people. I know a lot about housing.
I am delighted that these two groups have convened together to have this conversation with this many people here. I've been a part of these conversations through ULI, the chamber, the coalition that the chamber has formed. And I would love to see half as many people go to Columbia and talk about how to get more money out of our state, which has plenty. I would like to see people go to the county and talk to them about how to have a regional solution to housing. Specifically with this project, I am very pleased that the Union Pier group has brought this subject to our focus because it's very important. I think that what they are having to do with resilience, the building of roads, the underground parking, and the scrutiny that
Time.
is going to put before them.
Doug Warner.
Thank you, council members and commission. I want to commend our friends at the South Carolina State Ports Authority for bringing such a creative program to our community. On behalf of the 50,000 employees in the hospitality industry, we need more housing units. And if my numbers are correct, the plan put before us today creates 300, and that's more than we've done in a long time. So having followed this program since 91, when Saki first came out with a plan to redevelop Union Pier, this is a good plan. I'm happy we're here. I'm happy we're all participating. This gets us on the right path to creating the units we need. Thank you.
Faith River James.
Good afternoon, members of council and the commission. As a young law clerk, I was sitting in council chambers 25 years ago when the city decided to close Anson Borough Homes. An entire community of folks were moved away from the place where they had established roots and built their families. We have an opportunity to reconcile that action to some extent. Union Pier should meet the planned unit development requirement of dedicating 20% of the units on site for Charlestonians of moderate means to live and work. In the heart of downtown and in such close proximity to the central business district, this site offers an incredible opportunity to provide a significant amount of housing for a range of income levels. At a recent forum, Lowe talked about their plans to populate this site with commercial property taxed at 6%. But we know that owner-occupied property will provide stability for a thriving neighborhood on this pier. The lifeblood of a neighborhood comes from the people who live and leisure there. Thank you.
David Gross.
Yeah, but then I'll swing down.
Thank you. Council members and committee members. I'm David Gross. I represent the Mizzique-Ragboro Neighborhood Association, Charleston Garden District. What I've taken away from the few speakers is this turns out to be a net sacrifice of $16 million for the Ports Authority, and the transfer fee is not really borne by the developers or the Ports Authority, but it's by the future buyers. I think that what needs to be taken into account is that all residents of Charleston, rich and poor, are owed more affordable housing on site. The Ports Authority is making $300 million by reselling land, which was given to them as a gift for free by the taxpayers, the residents of the city of Charleston, rich and poor. Additionally, this development is proposing a TIF, which is a form of a gift, really, by the city of Charleston of approximately $300 million for improvements to the property so that it could be resold by the developers for a profit. Effectively, that's $600 million borne by the city of Charleston residents.
Art Milligan. Myra Paulson.
Thank you for letting me speak, Council and Planning Commission.
So I am just a part-time resident here, but also have been operating two very successful restaurants in Breckenridge, Colorado for over 40 years. So involved in the hospitality industry and the importance of providing short-term employee housing in a resort area. And so Breckenridge has obviously been fighting with this for a long time. And one of the problems is for the ones that can't afford to live in town, the ones that are driving the hour or so, it's parking. So this is part of the housing, I think, is just to provide like remote parking lots and then have some sort of a shuttle system to bring the employees into this area where instead of having, so that's something I have seen is needed here, as well as the affordable housing.
Kelly Vicario. Okay. Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here to speak to you. I live at 22 Lawrence Street in William Terrace Apartments, which the city housing is in control of it. It's a beautiful place. It's won all kind of awards. And I think when you go over to Union Pier, I feel that we need to have more of that kind of housing. It's for 62 plus, and it's based on their income. And you can expand that because people who works in the hospitality or teachers and stuff, you're looking at people that could be under $30,000 a year. So their income, their house and rent, if they're paying rent, needs to be based on a percentage of their income. And I think that this has been a real left out in all plans for any city, not just for Charleston, but for most areas. And since you got the model right there, I really needs to be projected. Thank you.
Kelly Vicario.
Help with the clarity, I can help with with the skippage. My name is Kelly Vicario. I'm with the Preservation Society of Charleston. Housing affordability is a critical factor that not only threatens the viability of Charleston's diverse communities across the city, but the economic well-being of the region. With some 1,600 new affordable units needed by 2030 to keep pace with the constant and growing demand for more tourism and service industry employees, the Union Pier project presents a major opportunity to support community needs. And the site's proximity to job centers, schools, and other neighborhood amenities like new parks make it an ideal place to create a diverse mixed income community. Unfortunately, initial plans set forth in the PUD fall short of what would be needed to accomplish those goals. With just 3% of on-site units designated for workforce housing, Union Pier's initial plans are deficient by national standards for on-site affordable units. Usually that figure is at least 10% or closer to 20% or more. And while the transfer fee proposal is a laudable strategy, we would urge a greater portion of the money be devoted to mortgage times. Thank you.
Amber Campbell Moore.
Good afternoon, Amber Campbell Moore, 302 Newburgh Drive. A lot of what I had written has already been talked about and reiterated over and over again. But as Ms. Shaw Johnson said and others, that 50 units on site is simply not enough. We're going to need a whole lot more. Our housing construction is not keeping pace with what we need. And out of those 50 units, will any of them be designated for home ownership? Are considerations being made for people who are in the lower AMI range, below 60%? It's an important conversation that is being had, and we must not consider only those who are wealthy and have a higher income. This is a great opportunity to have as many creative and long-term solutions as possible. And we also need to consider the unintended consequences of higher property taxes to the surrounding area. So I do support the addition of attainable housing to this project, but let's be sure not to sell ourselves short. The impact of this site will be immense. So let's have it benefit as many of our citizens as possible. Thank you.
Diamond Curry.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and members of the commission. My name is Diamond Curry. I work on behalf of the Charleston Metro Chamber of Commerce. I'm a little tall with my heels. And I just wanted to say that the chamber is very supportive of the Union Pier project and what they're proposing here on the peninsula. There was a lot of discussion tonight about what the private sector can or should be doing. And I want to say I'm here because the private sector, our business leaders have decided that we care about these issues. My colleague Craig Logan and the work with the Regional Housing Coalition is because the private sector cares. So we want to be committed to this work as you all continue talking about what this means for the city. I ask that you continue to include us. Thank you.
Craig Logan.
Hey, good afternoon, council. Craig Logan, 4922 O'Hare Avenue. Right, this is a good project, right? I think a lot of thought has been taking place into this, and we know that it addresses a critical need that we have in our area, right? We know housing, like Ms. Johnson said, it's an economic development issue. I think if we join together, if we consider making sure that at the base of this, we're doing what's right and not just what's easy, we're going to make sure that we get this right. This is an incredible opportunity to do something amazing and really set a stage and a model for moving forward and really putting a charge forward, not only to the city, other municipalities around, but also other business communities as well. So we fully support the project. We want to we want to make sure it's right. We want to make sure that everyone can benefit from this in the most useful way as possible. So thank you.
Josh Dix. And could everyone please silence their phones so everyone can hear the speakers?
Mayor, members of council, and the planning commission. I'm Josh Dix. I live at 640 Rutledge Avenue. And I am the government affairs director for the Charleston Trident Association of Realtors. And I am really excited about this conversation because we are finally talking about density. This is what we have to do to address affordability. At 1,600 units, it can't be achieved. We're going to have to look at denser zoning for this property if we want affordable housing and housing for all people. It's not dense enough for the site, and you have an opportunity to address resiliency. You have an opportunity to address all types of housing, including affordable housing and low-income housing. But we need higher density in order to make that development work. What the Ports Authority is suggesting is a great plan. It is respectful of the city, but as a parcel and what is in the highest and best use of that site, it is not at the appropriate density. So thank you.
Alexandra Storm. Alexandra Storm. Jonathan Oakman.
Good afternoon. I'm Jonathan Oakman, Chairman of the Board of the Charleston Redevelopment Corporation. I applaud the Port Authority for the aspects of their program that address the two needs for affordable housing, land and capital. That said, we have some concerns on both. On the capital side, what are the details of the transfer tax and how would that translate directly into the development of affordable housing? We need to know what that mechanism, how that mechanism works. On the land side, there are 1,600 units proposed in this development, 50 of which are on-site affordable. We would advocate that that number should be increased to show that the private sector is really addressing this issue and putting their money into helping Charleston address affordable housing. Finally, on the issue of the length of affordability, at the Redevelopment Corporation, we strive to achieve permanent affordability to avoid getting to that point where you're losing units in the future. We can do that through land trust, basic deed restrictions, or other mechanisms. I would challenge the port to consider some of these mechanisms to achieve permanent affordability. Thank you.
John Bisignano, and apologies if I mispronounced that. John Bisignano. Marcus McDonald.
Hello, my name is Marcus McDonald. I'm the lead organizer of Charleston Black Lives Matter. And at the end of the day, another concerned community member. I've had several conversations with folks about this project, and I want to make one thing very clear. I do not care how profitable this project will be for the Lower Port Authority. I know they're already going to make tons of money. What concerns me is the average day person who lives check and struggles to make rent every month. I'm 26 and can barely afford to live in the city. I recommend upon resubmittal of the Union Pier proposal, at least 45% of residential units be designated as attainable to affordable housing in perpetuity. And again, I repeat, in perpetuity, not in the 30 years. This number may seem left of field, however, it pales in comparison to the amount of affordable housing needed as discussed in the Housing Our Future plan. Charleston is in a housing crisis. Let's put people over profits. I also recommend a public-private partnership to include affordable businesses and nonprofit incubator spaces at Union Pier. This will be important to reconnect the Charleston community to the waterfront in a way that's been inaccessible for so long. Similar incubator spaces are in place around Charleston and even in Savannah along the riverfront, and it's been proven to be effective. In closing, I cannot finish, but the International African American Museum is going to be really close by, and y'all need to include everybody in it so people can enjoy the pier.
Tori Sanders.
Hello, my name is Tori Sanders. I live at 50 Lawrence. I want to commend the commission and the mayor for drawing attention to the very extreme need for increased affordable housing on site. I want to echo what Ms. James said in that low must be held to at least 20% on-site affordable housing, if not more, in order to compensate. Additionally, in order to compensate for the fee in lieu loophole we've experienced leading to lack of affordable housing on the peninsula and throughout the city, we simply need more affordable housing units on site at this development, not more money, to achieve the 16,000 units of affordable housing that we need by 2030. 50 units of workforce housing is simply not enough. Thank you.
Henry Fishburne.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've heard a lot of great comments, and I just want to say I'm glad to be able to speak for a short amount of time. The main thing I want to say is in capital letters, there needs to be more housing on site in this project. I could go on for hours about why, but I think what we really need also is another opportunity or more opportunities for the public to speak, because I've heard a lot of good ideas here that should be talked about more, and I think could be very productive. So more on-site housing, and the Ports Authority's been given this land, basically, they can give back more for units on site. Thank you.
Sally Eisenberg.
Sally Eisenberg, Cat Fiddle Street. Again, more affordable housing on site. Way to achieve this, no hotel rooms. That also increases density. If I have the math correct, 0 hotel rooms increases 600 affordable units. That would get you up to 37.5% affordable units on site. And I think that also would mean you had 10 times the increase in the transfer fee. So then on the transfer fee, second point, I think need to look at that numbers again. You were saying $325,000 per unit. Then Ms. Shaw Johnson let us know that it was already up to $400,000. So that means you either are going to have 10% less of units built elsewhere, or you're going to have to increase that by 10%. The Humanities Foundation units.
Ledley Bell.
Thank you. I am Leslie Bell. I came to learn and I've learned a lot. I think we all have. What I would propose is what has been proposed. We need more time to absorb some of these very good ideas, to think out of the box, to see what's been done other places. And I have one proposal that I've just come up with talking to a local architect. Rather than just depend on a transfer fee, we could build some very expensive Murray Boulevard type houses that was on fill and make a lot of money. And it would get away from this idea of condos, part-time owners, people not invested in our community. These people have come out, you all have spoken out. We need to share and understand what we've learned today. So I would ask more time. This is one for the history books, and let's do it right.
April Wood.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. Since the 1980s, HCF has been actively engaged in affordable housing and retaining the character of our important city. Many of our projects have been in collaboration with the city's Department of Housing and Community Development. Our work continues today with more urgency as Charleston has become increasingly unaffordable and displacement has accelerated. Historic Charleston Foundation has a permanent seat on the board of the Charleston Redevelopment Corporation, the parent organization of the Palmetto Community Land Trust, which provides permanent affordable housing. Additionally, HCF is partnering with the CRC, the City and Charleston Area Urban League, on its Common Cause Loan Fund to assist long-term residents below 80% AMI to stay in the historic houses. We care about affordability. The land at Union Pier is public land, and we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make a meaningful impact on the housing crisis. Shame on us if we squander this opportunity and do not include adequate on-site affordable housing with this development, especially when we have adopted studies that show that Charleston will have a
William Applegate.
Good afternoon. Thank you. William Applegate, Wagner Terrace, business owner on East Bay Street. And I want to just also state that the need for additional affordable housing on site, I think, is extremely important. We're being proposed a plan with over 550,000 square feet of new retail. Currently, it's very, very difficult to find anyone who's able to afford to live on the city, to work in either restaurants, law firms, businesses of all types. And that's a big problem, and something that we really need to address very seriously in this proposal. You know, Charleston is a living city. It is a working city. It is a working man's city. Families live here and work here. And we need to make sure that there are diverse opportunities, all income levels, of people able to live on this peninsula and not having to drive like most people do from Ladson and Somerville to come in here every day. And that's what the majority of people working in the city are doing. Creates transportation problems and everything else. So please consider additional housing.
Mary Neal Bacraw.
Mary Neal Burkhall, my home is at Mary Neal Burkhall. My home is at 97 Shadwick Drive. I've been a resident of the Charleston area for 71 years, most of that within the city. South Windmere was not originally in the city, but it became part of the city. We need greater home ownership by people who have been left out of our society. I have seen the city of Charleston change dramatically. I also know that 50 units is nothing for this development. I know that if they say 50 years, 30 years, and no developer says what, then 30 years is not long enough. We need permanent housing on site for people who can actually work in the city. We do not have public transportation to bring them in. What we have is totally inadequate. So please, please reconsider.
Zach Vicidi,
Zach Vasidi, 59 Cypress, and $55,000 a year salary as a public educator. I think what we forget is this is a human issue. Working at Sanders Clyde at a downtown middle school, I saw the impacts of homelessness, of people running into that benefit cliff and the difficulties that people face. And just like my 3% salary increase is not going to make me economically parable or parity with the rest of the people in the room, the 3% of housing is not going to bring equity to housing in this community. We really need to do more. And as a side note, we were here for 2.5 hours at both of the last meetings. We had plenty more time to speak and to have input from the public. Thank you.
Karen Quadron, I think it's Quadron. Katie Freer.
Thank you. I heard Barbara Milligan say that she would stand on the battlefield with a few people for affordable housing. And I'd really like to point out that when you stand on a battlefield, it hurts. And if what she is proposing doesn't hurt a little and it doesn't hurt their bottom line, then maybe they need to propose more. Because people who stand on a battlefield, it hurts, but there's a reason you do it, because it's important. And I'm standing here for my children because I am multi-generation Charlestonian, but I can't afford to live here. And I won't be able to tell my children, of course, you'll be able to have a house in Charleston someday. Because I just look at the past 3 years and what has happened to housing prices here, and it's terrifying. And I don't know if you're not scared for the future of your children and this city and what they'll be able to afford and do.
Time.
You're not paying attention.
Joe McGee.
Joe McGee on One Magazine. So I have a daughter who's a teacher and a son-in-law who's a teacher, and they benefit from the city housing program. They wouldn't be downtown if it weren't for the city housing program. So I urge the Planning Commission to require more on-site affordable housing. 3%, 50 out of 1,600 is too low a bar. We need to go higher. Thank you.
Pat Sullivan. Pat Sullivan.
Good afternoon, Pat Sullivan, 1002. Hold on, don't count that as my time.
You're good.
I can't do this. I'll let you do it. There, thank you. Okay, all right. 1002 Plantation Court in Mount Pleasant, and yes, across the river, we do care as well. Much more than 50 units, please. Many, many more units than 50. Think of the people who need to work there. They don't make enough money to buy a house there. And you also need to reconsider the formula for affordable housing. The formula doesn't bring the price down enough so that most likely the people who want to work there can afford to live in these affordable units. So there is a formula, but y'all can change it. You can make it more affordable for the people who need to work there. And I have lots more to say, but I'm limited. So those are the key points. Reconsider the formula. More units. Thank you.
Belvin Olazov.
Belvin Olsov, 428 Ray Street.
What I heard proposed tonight seems like a creative and potentially generous in lieu fee. And I think a lot of us think that it's not sufficient for rising to the challenge of housing in Charleston. My question is, who is Union Pier and by extension Charleston for? In 1990, the Black population of Charleston was 40%. Today, it's about 20%. Folks are commuting an hour to get to work here. Right now, Charleston is not hospitable in the way that it really needs to be. And I think there needs to be leadership in this Union Pier development if we're to chart a course forward that's truly sustainable and thoughtful for the crisis that we face. I heard housing trusts. I think a land trust would make a lot of sense. I think a much higher number of affordable housing units than the 50 proposed would make a lot of sense. And we need to show leadership in this time, and Union Pier is a great place to do that. Thank you.
Wanda Boyd.
Hello, Wanda Boyd, Charleston, South Carolina. I was born and raised on the peninsula of Charleston, and I'm the owner of Fire Red Vision. It's a DEI strategic planning business here in Charleston. And our mission is clear. We see that the landscape of Charleston is changing and the Black community has vanished. And what I would like to say is in 1990, when I got out of college and I returned home here to Charleston, the only job opportunities were retail stores on King Street and banking jobs. The Charleston today in 2023 is not the Charleston in 1989. The fact that more businesses and corporations have moved here to Charleston and job opportunities for locals, better jobs, are not there, that is a problem. My heart warms. I'm excited about the affordable housing opportunities here, but the vision needs to be clear. Affordable housing and real jobs don't, no opportunities to real jobs don't really go hand in hand. And so it is my hope that we will, take a look at how the landscape of Charleston has changed and understand that diversity continues to be the one thing.
And those were all the speakers that we had signed up. I'm just going to go over a couple of people that were skipped. I don't know if they stepped out of the room, but Alexandra Storm, John Bizignano. And was there anyone else who was missed? All right, and then we did receive some comments online. Linda Dennis, and this is just a summary of comments submitted by citizens who haven't already spoken. The comments in full were distributed to the Community Development Committee and Planning Commission ahead of today's meeting. Linda Dennis said she supported affordable housing and also for seniors to be located in the Union Pier area. She had been searching for senior housing since 2017, had been placed on many waiting lists, and the affordable housing should include a focus on seniors in the Low Country. Elizabeth Brabham supported the current plans for Union Pier and supported offering affordable housing and green space for all citizens, especially for citizens who worked in the service industry downtown. Brian Miller said he supported the Union Pier affordable housing proposal as a creative way to provide more affordable and workforce housing, both on the site and throughout the city. Jamie Hicks urged the commission to investigate and seriously evaluate employing architect Alejandro Aravina's ideas in the affordable housing sector. It merged Habitat for Humanity's model with public housing to find efficiency, pride, and community in previously sterile environments. Jonathan Ply said this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for prime waterfront property, and it should not be wasted on making developers happy and profitable. It should be created into something that both tourists and locals could view and appreciate. Harold Jackson said the city needed the pier to become the city's new Main Street that fostered local business and community development, and all housing on the pier should be about a live-work formula that could be priced to match the types of retail, commerce, and office valued for the pier land uses. Jim Malecki said he would like to see more green space in the plan and more sculptures. And those were all the comments we received.
Thank you very much for that. I think we had a very fruitful meeting today and got a lot of information. And the city committee is going to take these information very seriously. All information that comes from the citizen, we take it very, very seriously. and we will iron it out and see where we need to go from there. Councilman Gregory, you have something to say?
Yeah, if I can ask that we put something on the agenda for our next meeting, and that's 1000 King Street. Speaking of affordable housing, I think we should have some discussion on that project. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson, you will take care of that for me, please. So what I'm saying, we don't have anyone else want to speak before I close this period down. Or have any questions? But you see, it's a lot of information and it's a lot of things we have to go through and take into consideration so far as housing is concerned. Housing have always been a big factor here in the city of Charleston. And that's one thing we were pushing for ever since I was here on council with almost 20 years now, 20 years or whatever the case may be. But housing has always been a problem. And we are trying to hold on to housing as much as we possibly can. The problem with housing sometimes with the length of time we place on affordability, that became a problem. That's a big problem too. When you have it 25 years or 30 years, that's not a long time. Runs out pretty fast. And so we have to look at that very seriously now when we're trying to create affordable housing and retain the affordable housing piece. So these are the things that we're going to look at very seriously on this committee, on the city committee. And I pledge to do that myself and along with my colleagues here. So that's one thing that's very important to us, to everyone sitting here. You might see us looking other way, but this is very important when it comes to housing for everyone that live in the city of Charleston and elsewhere who coming into the city of Charleston. Because we know the balance is not there so far as the balance is, when I'm talking about a balance with the salary and housing, doesn't match, and I don't see it yet. So we're going to do this and we're going to work on the city committee, going to take it under consideration, everything have been said. And if we feel that we need more information, that will come forth too, before we make a final decision of where we want to go and what we're going to do with it. So right now I would ask. Before I turn it back over to the state port for their response, anyone on the planning commission, Mr. Karras, or anyone have any response, last response before I turn it back over?
Ms. Lampus, I think had some, but I think I want to take this opportunity. It was a pleasure to meet with you all and try to solve this problem, which is ongoing, and we're going to solve it. So thank you, Ms. Lampus.
First of all, I'd like to thank Ms. Melvin and the port for the offerings today. That was very generous and great ideas. I think it's very important that, as Ms. Jacobs said, the devil is in the details. And a lot of information was put tonight for us to consider, but we need to digest it and determine exactly what the offerings are. Just looking over my shoulder at the teleprompter is not the best way to do it. Secondly, I think we need to clarify, and I'm hoping Mrs. Johnson can do that. I think we have affordable housing and I think we have workforce housing. And for some reason, it's not being divided up as such. And I would like to see that. I would also like to see a permanent model for affordable housing, not one that's 10, 15, 20, or even 30 years. Charleston is not getting less expensive, it's getting more expensive. So we need to look at the long-term future and not just what we're doing today for that many years. Lastly, we're discussing the fee in lieu of, or capping the units. I think that we, as a commission, that we need to look at in our rezoning rewriting about considering the fee in lieu of not as an option or increasing that more, because it is obviously not keeping up with the real estate in Charleston. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that information. And we are looking at with the fee in lieu. We are rather person built in to give us fee in lieu, but then sometime that's what happened. But we're going to look at that very seriously when it comes to the planning commission from New York. Now we have a response from the, excuse me, from the state port, Mr. Lowe or whomever is going to give a response. And then before we adjourn.
We'll just go with this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having us here with you tonight. Not really a response, just to thank you for everyone who is here and does care about this issue. As I stated very earnestly, that this is something I now care about as well. We're listening, We heard the comments. We will continue to meet with the city staff and others to put forth the best plan that we possibly can to not only address this issue, but for Union Pier in total. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. And I think received a lot of information today. And if anyone, all is well, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Mr.